So the fight that is going to have to happen in the UFC is not going to make a lot of the UFC purists happy. Because while Tony Ferguson absolutely deserves a shot against Conor McGregor, and would be a spectacularly and aesthetically pleasing fight to watch, it would be a war. It would be, in terms of the entertainment value, of a potentially against the Nate Diaz's of the world. The fight that makes so much more money would be Georges St-Pierre, if he wants to fight again, at 170 versus Conor McGregor. I'm going to show you why right now. There are a couple of elements to decide this. So during McGregor's reign of the UFC, you see that his name is pretty popular amongst 4 of the top 5 highest grossing UFCs and buy rates in the $1.2 to $1.6 million rate. And then if you go down to a time where GSP was at the top of his game, and we go to the next card.
So let's just make this clear. Can we go back for 1 second? Conor McGregor owns the top 4, okay?
No, top 3.
UFC
100 is the one that he wasn't on, but it's still got 1.3 million.
Oh, UFC 100. Yeah. Okay, for the top 5 ever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, there's a common trend during the mid-reign of UFC 100 to UFC 200 where a million pay-per-view buys was really rare, and getting like above 750,000 was where you really wanted to be for like the best of the best. And St-Pierre dominates that. Versus Condit, versus Hardy, versus Kosher 2, versus Shields, versus Penn 2, versus Diaz. These are all, if you don't think that McGregor and JSP do over 2 million pay-per-view buys, you're out of your mind. And truthfully, I think if you wanted to make it even a bigger spectacle, which would be way too fair to Conor McGregor, but you wanted to see something special, you wanted to see what a true fan base really could look like on its biggest stage, have it in Ireland. Have it in Ireland.
I was just going to say.
Have the world lose its damn mind.
Just don't have it in Vegas.
This is a business. And until this fight happened, the GSP MSG card, it doesn't save the UFC's year. It was a great card. It's going to do over 1 million pay-per-view buys. The UFC bled this year. They bled badly because they didn't have the star power. When John Jones was done, that hurt them. So while there's a lot of entertaining fights to make, Dillashaw versus Mighty Mouse. Mighty Mouse is the owner of some of the lowest grossing pay-per-view cards in UFC's history, with under 200,000 pay-per-view buys. So I'm not convinced that Dillashaw and Mighty Mouse do more than 350 or 400,000. However, there's just fights that we want to see. Now, it's all going to come down to, in my opinion, quickly, one thing. Does GSP want to continue to fight? And if he does he want to fight McGregor for the biggest payday of his life? Because it would be the biggest payday of anybody. And then that's what, again, as Hawani calls it, the lottery ticket. You get to fight on the McGregor card. You get to fight on the McGregor versus GSP card. You have won the lottery, no matter who you are. I think from the purist standpoint, obviously Tony Ferguson should be fighting Conor McGregor. I think what's going to happen, based on the UFC being a business, it's going to be GSP. Or at least there'll be rumors about it.
There's 3 fights that could be made for GSP, as I remember. Tyron Woodley, which is number 3 in my own rankings of how I think this should go. The second is Robert Whittaker, and the first is Conor McGregor. And here's why. Everything that Jason alluded to with the statistical factual information of how this would be a huge buy. You could literally put nothing on the card and people would buy it.
Well, you make it a boxing fight essentially with like no undercards.
Do whatever you want if you're the UFC.
That's 2.5 million pay-per-view.
At least 2. Let's just put it at 2. So yes, that should happen. Now the reason why you got to put Robert Whittaker before anybody else is because his next fight is going to be in Sydney, Australia. He hails from Australia. It has the potential for a huge buy if you put GSP up against him. And GSP also said before going into this fight with Michael Bisping, if I win the middleweight crown, it's only fair that I defend it.
So he's going to fight?
So he's going to.
Would that be a third belt?
What's more likely? Robert Whittaker. Because Conor McGregor is going to have to take action against Tony Ferguson. Now, as you said, with how William Morris has not had a good ROI ever since they bought in to the UFC, it's the fight that should happen. It will not happen just yet.
Yeah, I just want to see what Dana thinks, because
can I ask you a serious question? Can I ask you a serious question?
It's the most pay-per-view buys.
You want to see what Dana thinks? Like, he's a promoter.
Yeah.
He's a salesman.
I know what he's
Part of that is deceiving the public. Do you really
I want to know.
For lack of a better, more respectful term, do you care?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
I do because Dana White's responsible as anybody else was for the immediate success and the continued success of the UFC. He's one of the smartest businessmen.
Right,
in
but
sports.
to say what he thinks also means that he's going to be completely truthful in his press conferences. I don't think that he's always being truthful. That's why I take it half full.
I go back and forth with Dana White because he sometimes comes out and I think Dana White is as human as any fan of the UFC is, because I think he is a fan of the UFC. Like, Dana White gets really amped up after the fights, and he gets really excited to talk to the press. And when he sits down and talks to the press, a lot of it's just overreactionary responses. And that's literally how the media makes money, is overreaction and responses. And that's what we do. So I think there's a human element to Dana White. It's frustrating because when you are in the position that Dana White is in and you make promises or you say things, you have coming from a place of authority. Therefore, when you say something, it holds weight, and the media responds to that and they create the headlines. So I'm always back and forth with Dana White because of his decisions on handling certain things, but like anybody knows that the UFC's success, the Fertitta brothers are a major instrument, Dana White has been a major instrument, and then the star power that has been created and cultivated and built up to. So I'd love to sit down with Dana White and talk to him about it.
I would as well. I'm not saying that I would just bar him from this show.
But at the same time, like, you could sit down with any commissioner of any organization and you have no idea. Like, I love Adam Silver. You don't know when he's playing up for the media or when he's not. Roger Goodell. Sit down with that man. You can try to.
But I don't think Adam Silver has been caught in a lie as many times as Dana White has.
He's also not being asked questions immediately after the NBA Finals to make fights. Exactly. He's not being asked after the NBA Finals. For one, he's not in the press conference, and for two, like, the commissioners of other sports don't have to make events happen. The events are based off the competition that has already happened previously.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But with the platform that he has, he hasn't deceived the public as many times as Dana White has. But again, I agree with that. We're calling it as we see it. We're being honest. We're not disrespecting anybody here. We're just being very, very honest with what we have seen. Who would you have, by the way? GSP Conor. Good cliffhanger. We're going to have that next time on TYT Deportes.
That's one I can't decide.